Okay Reddit, what are your true stories that nobody will ever believe? This isn't about me, but it's about my dad. He was a local police officer for 32 years, eventually retiring as a lieutenant. My family has lived in Silicon Valley since before I was born, and my folks still live there. A few years after transferring to his retiring police department, my dad is working graveyard. At the time he was a beat cop just killing time in the wee hours of the morning. That is, until he gets a call about a break-in at an office building. When he gets there, he finds the door open. Don't know if it was smashed and lockpicked undamaged. He's the first responder, so he peeks his head inside. There are cubicles, computers, desks, chairs, tables, everything set up to look like your standard Innertech-style high-tech office. Except that it's a ghost town. Everything is covered in a fine layer of dust. Everything looks like it hasn't been touched in years, if not longer. My dad looks from the door in and sees footprints that cross through the office and deep into the building. They end at a large safe at the back of the building, which is now open. My dad exits the building as a few more officers show up. A few minutes later, a lady in a very nice business suit, keep in mind, this is at like 3 AM, with a radio walks up to my dad. She looks at him and says something along the lines of, "Thank you officer, you and the others may go now. This is a private matter, we have this under control." As she turns around, she gets on her radio and all she says is, "We have been compromised." My dad still, to this day, has no clue what happened, who owned the building or the business, and as far as talking about what went down, no one really talked about it after they were asked to leave the premises. Upon further discussion, the lady did identify herself, although my dad can't remember how. Government agency, private security, and it looks like it may have been an old IBM or HP building. Apparently these companies set up a lot of dummy buildings that would house their secrets and tech information that they didn't want to get out to their competitors, the general public. So they would set up offices just like this, and when someone would break in, my guess would be that the dust would be used to track footprints, fingerprints, and probably attach itself the lungs of the burglar so they get cancer and die for trying to steal trade secrets. Okay, maybe no cancer, but you get the idea. When you said a lady in a very nice business suit with a radio walks up, I don't know why, but I pictured in my head a business lady walking up with a boombox on her shoulder. When I was about 10 years old, my family went to the Colorado River with another family. The other family brought their boat for water skiing. One night my dad and our family friend, Jeff, were going to do some nighttime catfishing. I convinced them to take me with them so I didn't have to hang out with all the women. Since this was the mid-80s, my dad and Jeff were getting pretty tipsy while they fished. Around midnight one of the lines just starts reeling out. The reel is screaming when my dad picks it up and goes to set the hook. Once the hook is set, my dad starts fighting this fish. After about 30-45 minutes, the fish appears to be tiring. Jeff starts maneuvering the boat to help my dad land this fish. This where the story gets weird. Just as my dad gets the fish about 20 feet from the boat, the fish takes off again. It runs the line all the way down to the reel. My dad had anticipated catching large catfish and was using his deep sea gear. We then realize the fish is pulling the boat backwards. Not at a rapid pace, but still backwards. Jeff gives the boat a little more throttle and the fish fights more and we're in a stalemate tug of war. Finally we hear Jeff say that the boat is full throttle and fish starts pulling us backward again. After about 5 minutes of this, my dad cast the line and we limped the boat, half rowing and half under motor power, back to camp. To this day, no one believes us. They say my dad and Jeff were just drunk. Here's the thing, I remember this and I was 10. I wasn't drunk. Scared the crap out of me though. To this day, I hate the idea of swimming in the Colorado River. We don't even know if what we hooked was a fish because it never got close enough. TLDR, went night fishing and was dragged by something strong enough to pull a boat backwards. This horrifies me. One day when I was about 5, I was walking around a yearly country fair in town with my mom. We'd been there most of the day and mom was exhausted. As she was dragging me toward the gate, I yell, "Mom, Mom, that's Willie Nelson. I want to see Willie Nelson." She said, "Oh, come on. It's just some skinny guy in a cowboy hat." We're leaving without looking. My grandmother came home. She'd been working the info desk at the fair and called my mom to say, "You'll never guess who came by the booth today, Willie Nelson. It seems he's doing a show around here and he loves fairs, so he decided to come see this one." I was vindicated. I have told this story far too many times and have always been met with the same skeptical look. When I was about 9 or 10, I just finished playing around in my basement. I decided playtime was over and walked upstairs to go ask my mom for some lunch and saw her taking a nap. My dad and older brother were home, so as I was about to go look for one of them, I noticed something strange. There was a small ball of light in the middle of the living room. I thought it was a reflection of something until I realized it was moving. I stood frozen still, as it was moving slowly in my mother's direction. It wasn't moving particularly fast, maybe an inch every few seconds. It probably took a couple minutes when it was 2 feet away from my mom when I heard a loud bang. Instantly the ball vanished, leaving a cloud of smoke, and my mom awoke. My dad rushed in from outside and my brother from upstairs and asked what I did. I told them what happened and they brushed it off as something a younger kid would make up, but they could not find anything that would make that kind of noise or why there was smoke in the room and grounded me instead. I know what I saw and still no one believes what happened that day. Ball lightning. One time, while mowing my lawn, I noticed an extremely odd phenomenon coming from Utah Lake, which I live about 15 or 20 miles from. There was an extremely thin sliver of what looked like water protruding from the surface of the lake and stretching all the way to the sky, like a waterspout. Utah rarely gets tornadoes, so I was completely blown away while staring at this magnificent string of water dance around the lake for a few minutes, until it dissipated. Still don't know exactly what it was, but my guess is that it was just some kind of really low power waterspout. I don't know of anyone else who saw it either. Also, in the 4th grade, a friend of mine opened a fortune cookie he got at lunch, and the fortune read, "Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die." He started freaking the frick out. I read the fortune myself and couldn't believe my eyes, but I laughed at him regardless. I hope you know that your friend's fortune is actually a combination of 2 Bible verses, Ecclesiastes 8:15 and Isaiah 22:13. It's been a saying for a couple thousand years. Nothing to freak out about. This isn't as weird or interesting as most of the other stories here, but it was the weirdest thing I seen. Me and my twin brother, 17 at the time, were walking home from the school bus stop one day. At one point, he tells me to look up at the sky to the right of us. I look up, and there, floating silently, is a black object probably 100 meters upwards. It's just sitting there, emitting a thin wisp of grayish smoke. As far as I know, there isn't any aircraft that can stay still whilst emitting smoke and being completely silent, as there was absolutely no wind blowing at the time. We were both stunned when the clouds started to creep closer to the object. By the time we reached home, both staring at the object the whole way, the clouds had completely surrounded and hidden the object. It seems surreal at the time now. I want to believe I was in a car chase with someone trying to kill me and my friends. This whole interaction probably lasted no more than 4-6 minutes, but felt like forever. So here's the story. Me and some friends were driving around the suburbs around outhouses doing teenager shenanigans when we pull up to a stoplight at about 3 AM. As we are stopped at this stoplight, I hear my friends talking in the back seat. Friend 1, "Hey, throw an M&M at that guy's car." Friend 2, "No, he looks scary." I think nothing of it, and as I turn from the left lane I hear a little tink and this guy cuts through lanes and turns to start chasing us, and my friends tell me to floor it. So I'm going about 60-65 miles per hour down this main street at 3 AM with no other cars around. Stupid me figures this guy must be a reasonable person, so I try to get next to him to apologize. Big mistake. He is swearing and yelling and reaching for something in his glove compartment. And then it gets worse as he tried to ram my car. So I swerve out of the way and I'm driving in the opposite lane of traffic trying to lose this guy. And then I see it. There is a red light ahead where you can only make a sharp right or left. I figure I've already done enough stupid stuff today and didn't want to risk running a red light. I swerve onto a side street and start driving through streets and alleys barely bigger than my car. I had to maneuver this car through areas either would be impossible considering I was still going 40-45 miles per hour and he was still following us. After a fair bit of maneuvering we lose him and drive around to make sure we lost him. We finally get back to my house and just laugh our asses off that this guy tried to kill us over an M&M. TLDR was in a car chase where I could have died, but escaped unharmed. I played guitar with George Harrison in a guitar store on Maui a few days before his death in 2001. I was just another customer at the time and I didn't know who he was. He was buying a guitar for his kid, so we sat down and traded tunes for about 20 minutes. We were both playing mini strats. He ended up purchasing a yellow miniature Fender Strat and walked out. The woman working the cash register pointed to him and said, "Do you know who you were playing guitar with?" I said, "No, why?" She's like, "That's George Harrison of the Beatles." I was freaking mind blown. Now that is an awesome story. One summer night during my high school years, I was hanging out at a friend's house at around 3 AM. I believe I was around 16, and I didn't have my own car, but my mom would let me borrow hers quite often. When I arrived at my friend's house, I rolled up the windows, but forgot to shut the sunroof. When it came time to leave, I noticed something moving in my mom's car. It was two cats, having the time of their lives playing in my mother's car. I go back inside and grab my friend, because it was pretty hilarious. This is where it gets crazy. When we get close to the car, they freak the frick out. They are jumping around like crazy, trying to jump through the windows, hitting the sides of the doors. After about 10 seconds, one jumps out of the sunroof and runs away. It's at this point I decide to open the door to let the second cat out. This really freaks him out. Once I started to open the door, the cat launches from the backseat in the windshield. I hear a terrible crunch, and the cat starts howling. By this time the door is open enough, and the cat runs out into the night. My friend and I have a good laugh, and say our goodbyes. I jump in the car, and notice the windshield is cracked from top to bottom. It wasn't funny after that. Being 3 AM, I decide the best course of action is to park my mom's car and let her find out in the morning. In the morning I wake up to screaming. Of course, I tell my mom a cat did it, and she says that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and leaves for work. When she gets to work she calls me and tells me she believes me now. Turns out there were scratches, cat hair, and cat blood all over the car. Those 3 pieces of evidence kept me out of some serious crap. TLDR. Cat broke a windshield with its face. As a young teenager I was riding my bike keeping up with normal car traffic, which for that road meant 35 mph or so. The bike dropped out from under me. It felt like cartoon where I had just run out over a cliff and keep moving forward for a bit until I realized there was no ground. I guess I hit a rock while turning a bit. It is the best explanation I could ever figure. Flying forward like Superman, I hit the ground with my palms first to adjust the landing to my side rather than my face. Then log rolled with the momentum. After a few rotations, my legs were slightly ahead of the rest of my body. I dig my heel into the asphalt and the remaining momentum levered me right back up to standing. Running actually, because if I did not I would have smacked back down face first. All of this occurred without thought. When I finally stopped, the car behind was only 6-7 feet away. My bike had skidded 10 feet further down the road. I picked it up and continued along my way. Only had some road rash and on my palms and a bruise where I made contact to show for it. To be going that fast on a bike would have taken a pretty good size downhill and you would have had way more damage upon wrecking. I saw a triangle-shaped UFO a few years ago, the 12th of April 2008 at approximately 8:45 PM Central Time. Nearly a full moon that was about 200 feet off of the ground and at least a football field in length on each edge. Each corner had a white light with an unearthly, bright glow. It moved wherever it wanted to and made absolutely no noise. I know I wasn't hallucinating because the people driving next to me were extremely erratic and pointing at the mysterious craft in a very panicked manner. I turned right and sped away, basically running for my life. Seeing something like that in person is way more terrifying than you would think. This experience has altered my mind, in that I now find it much easier to believe paranormal and unexplainable situations. This completely shattered my perception of what is really possible. I really don't care if you don't believe me. I know what I saw that night. When I was about 6 I would wake up in the middle of the night and in my doorway there would be a large figure and you could make out a silhouette of fur and red eyes. All I could hear was heavy breathing. I would be too terrified to scream and I was on the top bunk of a bunk bed so I wasn't moving anywhere fast. I would pretend to sleep. Eventually I stopped seeing him. In grade 9 I was at a sleepover with about 5 other girls. I was telling them about my experience when one of them describes him to me. I said, "How the heck did you know that?" She said, "Our friend Blake saw him too." So the next school day I approached Blake in the hall and just started describing him. He had tears in his eyes and said, "How the heck do you know that?" He later told me the big hairy man used to sit on his bed and he talked to him but doesn't remember what was said. About 2 years later I had to go to summer school. I was talking to this chick in my class and found out the big hairy man would visit her too. He too would sit on her bed. After high school I was at a party where I was spending the night. My friend Pete and I were sharing a bed just shooting the crap and I brought up the big hairy man. He said, "If you could see my face right now, I have tears in my eyes. I used to dream he would come through my window and stand over me." We have no connection with each other before high school. Even after all the other sightings my mother still thinks I am crazy. For the record, I don't believe in ghosts or the paranormal, but this one incident was simultaneously the least explainable and most terrifying occurrence in my entire life. When I was about 10, my best friend and I were playing in my recently remodeled basement. I never had gone down there much if ever, even though I spent my entire childhood in the same house. Mostly because that basement had always given me the jeebies big time. My parents left for about an hour to run some errands, so during we were just playing video games. Almost immediately after my parents left, my pet rabbit, who was also down there with us, started freaking out visibly for no reason. At the same time, it got markedly colder in the basement. Surprisingly, this was before I had seen any ghost movies that made use of that cliche. We started getting really freaked out, and then, like out of a horror movie, there was a soft groan behind one of the walls and the main lamp on that side of the basement flickered and then burned out. All of these events happened within about 5 minutes of my parents leaving in chronological order. I remember it vividly, and my friend could recount the exact same sequence of happenings to the T. Needless to say, we both ran upstairs screaming while being freaked out beyond comparison. We left the rabbit down there because we were truly mortified. He was in his cage, obviously. A couple days later, my rabbit passed away for no apparent reason. I avoided going down there for the rest of the time we owned the house until I went to college. My parents were furious when I refused to use the game room they set up for me down there, not believing a word of what happened. To this day I do not understand at all what happened or why. My friend who was there with me and I will nervously joke about it if it's brought up, but we both know how terrified we were. TLDR. Playing downstairs in my newly finished basement. Encounter a scene from a horror movie plot in real life. Acquire fresh underwear. Radon and or carbon monoxide explain this fairly well. I used to work in the security field, personal security, not rent-a-cop security. In 1989 a friend hires us to do a minor B&E. Turns out a married couple with 2 kids, one 2-year and one 6-year, noticed their neighbors were following them around and had been caught taking pictures. The guy they hired isn't going to risk getting in the crap. So when his clients and the neighbors were out of town, he hired me and another guy to go into the neighbor's house and find out what was up. We entered the place and it was jammed full of surveillance equipment. Very expensive, top of the line stuff. We found files and logs of everything the 6-year was doing. So we finally lugged a copier into the apartment and copied everything. Took 2 days. We found cancel checks, personal letters, hundreds of video and audio tapes. It turned out the neighbor couple were both employees, didn't find by whom. The guy was ex-Navy, gay, and constantly wrote his lover. The chick was single and obviously had psychology training. They were spending all this time following around a freaking 6-year-old, noting his behavior and habits. We found 2 listening devices in his bedroom. His parents were only observed for some environmental influence notes. The weirdest bit was that many of the notes referred to a potential incident that involved the 6-year but seemed to say the incident hadn't occurred yet. The surveillance team, as we now saw they were, had been doing this for 2 years at a cost of a few $100,000. Why? Beats the frick out of me. Freaky crap. During a weekend my cousin spent the night over my grandma's place. I was living there with my family for a while. It was Saturday morning and the day before was when me and my cousin bought our own GamerCube game at GameStop. I got Animal Crossing and he bought Mario Tennis. We played Mario Tennis a lot on Friday night, so I woke up early, around 7 AM, to play my Animal Crossing. I was so excited and I was on it for like an hour and a half. I started seeing this black paw-like looking thing at the side of the window come up a few times but go away really fast. I just assumed it was a crow. The room I was playing in was on the second floor. I was enjoying the game so much until there was this huge black figure on the side window just staying there. Peripheral vision. I turned my head and looked to the right to see a huge human figure hanging upside down at the window and I just booked it out of the room. Left the game unpaused and the door open. I ran downstairs to wake my cousin up and I told him to come upstairs to see an alien, but he was too tired from staying up too late the night before. I'm still scared going up to that room alone, but I just think of it as me imagining things. I don't do drugs and didn't drink at the time. No one believes me and I don't tell anyone cause I feel like they'd think I'm weird. TLDR. I saw an alien out my window hanging upside down while I was playing Animal Crossing. When I was 13 I had a white horse, named Lily, who died in a freak accident. About a month later I was out in the yard and saw a white horse in the field. Looked away, looked back and it was gone. We only had 2 black horses at the time. It was a rainy, dark night. I thought that was weird but I was probably imagining it. Then my little 3-year-old brother came out of the barn and said, "Why is Lily in the barn?" I thought she died. I went into the barn and there she was standing in her old stall. I wasn't creeped out. It was weird. I just knew she was saying goodbye. I left and never saw her again. I had this strange sense of closure after that. I never told anyone. I knew they'd think it was a trick of the light or I was hallucinating. When I was younger I got roped into watching my 3-month-old niece while my sister got her hair done. So when there I am, sitting in the waiting area of a hair salon with my niece, in walks Keanu Reeves. I was nervous as crap and just kept looking at him while he read the magazine and waited, but I was too scared to say anything to him. Pretty soon though my niece started crying, and I'm trying to quiet her down because I didn't want her to bother Keanu, but she wouldn't stop. Pretty soon he gets up and walks over. He started running his hands through her hair and asked what's wrong. I replied that she was probably hungry or something. So Keanu put down his magazine, picked up my niece and lifted his shirt. He breastfed her right there in the middle of the hair salon. Chill guy, really nice about it. No one will believe me about what I just read. My entire family was on vacation, at a hotel on the beach. Me and my cousin are sitting out by the beach around 9 at night, and start seeing this orange orb of light on the horizon. At first we think it's a cruise ship, because the port was not too far from our hotel. We're staring at these lights though for good 5 minutes, and realize it's more than we think. They're not moving at all, so they're not flares or lights from a boat, and they are about 15 degrees above the horizon. We watch them for a few more minutes, and one of them disappears. It doesn't just fade out, kind of phases out like you would see if you turn off a very old black and white TV. That's when my cousin grabbed his camera and started filming the second one. Filmed it for a few minutes, turned off his camera, and then the second one vanished after around 5 more minutes. All my family thought we were crazy for thinking it was a UFO and just thought we saw a boat. I still have the video but haven't done anything with it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.